Roberto is an environmental and evolutionary biologist. He works as an associate professor at the Biological Institute and as the head and scientific coordinator of the International Master Program in Biodiversity of the Tomsk State University in Russia. Hello. And
hello, good morning.
We'll discuss today with a quite provocative title, but interesting to hear you, the unsustainability of sustainable palm oil. Roberto, stage is yours for 20 minutes.
Thank you, Fabrice. Thank you for inviting me at the Sustainable Oil and Fat Virtual Congress. Just uploading the presentation. Will be ready, I think, soon. Okay, so.
Yeah, stage is yours.
Okay, perfect. So thank you again. So yes, you're right. The topic of my presentation today is a bit provocative because it talks about the unsustainability of sustainable palm oil. The thing is that almost anyone is aware that palm oil represents a big concern, a big threat for the environment. The thing is that not many, just very few people know that palm oil, even if sustainable, certified as sustainable, could represent a problem for the environment mostly. I will not talk today about the social and the human rights problem related to palm oil, but I will focus on the environmental impact of that. So let's start from the main concern related to the general palm oil production. Now, everybody knows that the problem of deforestation is extremely relevant, and of course palm oil production contributes much on that. And if you look at the distribution of modified and primary forests that are still alive in the world, you see that in most of the continents except for South America, the percentage of forests that have been modified compared to the primary ones is extremely higher. This, of course, if you focus on the case of Asia, for instance, where in Southeast Asia you have most of the production of palm oil. This is the first, the starting point of the concern about palm oil and other tropical commodities. The second main element that we need to consider talking about the sustainability of this kind of production is something that emerged from a paper published by Lorenz called Agricultural Expansion and Its Impact on Tropical Nature. It's quite clear, and of course we have many years to evaluate that this is a trend that's becoming extremely relevant for the tropical and in general agricultural expansion. Because if you see during the 90s, almost the trend between oil and food price, you see that they almost goes together, so they match very well. So this means that our food production strictly depends on the oil. This is why we started to be very concerned about how we really produce the tropical food, and in this particular case, tropical oils, because the third element that represents a very big issue is that we need to create the space for growing in a globalized world, because until the production up to the 70s, 80s, the production was mainly local. We could keep that internal, like a local production, and then of course you don't need much land to clear. But if you start to globalize the production, then you need to open new ways. So that's why I call this a bad way. This is a simple statistic that represents the number of fires compared to the distance road. Now, of course, the closer you are to a road, the higher possibility to start a fire, because of course most of them are anthropogenic fires. So the third main problem of palm oil production is that you need to clear forest land. So to do that, you can have two different approaches. The first one is to use forest for pulp and oil. So you use for paper, and you cut the part of the forest, then you use the most valuable parts. You can sell the timber, and then you can replace it with the production. The third possibility is just to burn it and clear it. And of course, as soon as you open new roads, as you can see from the maps, but I'll show you in more details, of course, you open possibilities for development, but also in some way environmental impacts. So the thing is, just take into consideration the rule of roads, because no, roads are somehow the starting point of destruction. If you look at these maps, in Borneo, for instance, and you look at the roads that were built between 1973 and 2010, you see that then this became exactly overlapped to what we now know that is forest loss. So we losing forests exactly around main roads, because of course now they are fundamental for exploitation of this part of the environment. The fourth main concern that represented our basis to start this research on the sustainability of sustainable palm oil is that if you consider the international trade and the importing exporting places, this is in general not only for palm oil. This represent the countries that export more in terms of species threats. So the threats that we put on species that are mainly from countries like Indonesia, Madagascar, Papua New Guinea, Malaysia, and so on. And the import increase, the countries that importing some goods are more responsible of species threats are USA, Japan, Germany, France, UK, Italy, Spain, and so on. So you see USA, then followed by most of European countries. Of course, this is not the most updated statistics, but it won't be changed so much unless we consider, of course, the growing economies now from China, for instance, and India, that you will see in the next slide. So consider now the internal or the domestic use of each country. You see that most of them, the ones that export more threats, like Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Madagascar, and so on, have a similar percentage of domestic use of the commodities that create these environmental impacts. But when we look at the other countries that represent, that importing the goods could create the conditions for these threats to develop, you see that European Union, again, USA, Japan, so the Western world is really leading this phenomenon of exporting and importing threats for different species. So looking at a general global map, for instance, this is the number of species threatened by foreign consumption from Malaysia. So the red lines, and you see how globalized, of course, is this exporting of environmental threats. If you look at the blue lines, this is just for comparison. These are the species that are threatened by the German consumption only. So, of course, you see that even if it's localized in Europe, these branches spread all over the world and involve, of course, many countries, including Southeast Asia, where you see that exportation, the number of threats that are exported by Southeast Asian countries can reach almost every point of the world. So this is why I define that a global unsustainable trade. Because the problem is, okay, let's exclude the emissions and the pollution derived from the long distance travel of these goods. You need to move these commodities from the place of production to the place of consumption. So this is a main concern. But beside this, there is the problem of the local environmental impact. And we are talking about a place in the world that has a unique biodiversity, that is in the tropical belt. So of course we need to seriously be concerned about that. And this was the main concern connected to the general production of palm oil. So imagine this in Europe, for instance, the United States and Indonesia, we already have that the per capita consumption of palm oil is almost double compared to, relatively compared to the population. The consumption in other developing countries like China, India is still below the level, the relative proportion of population. Imagine if, and this is from 2012, so nowadays the proportion would be a bit higher. Imagine that the countries like China, India, and other developing countries start using the same amount of palm oil, so the per capita consumption will pass the population level, where we are going to collect, to grow, and sell this palm oil production that we really need to supply, of course, this so-called sustainable development. So this, of course, is a matter of global market that really must be addressed by biologists, because looking again of specifically on palm oil, who sells and who buys palm oil, you of course see that Indonesia and Malaysia are leading this sector, but developing countries now are now passing the threshold of Europe, US, and you see India, Indonesia, China. Now, for instance, there is a market in Pakistan, Nigeria, some African countries, and so on. So the concern is exactly how to supply this to developing countries. And we were very surprised and let's say concerned by reading the report produced by Eyes on Forest, this NGO, that found that 4 RSPO supply chain certificate holders were involved in the trade of palm oil product that was purchased illegally. So they both illegal production that then it was certified. For instance, you see 2 photos in this slide about the kind of environment that was involved. There is a palm oil plantation inside a national park. This was a photo taken by this NGO in 2015. Another photo taken in 2014. It was a young palm oil plantation inside another formerly forested area. So the report started a case against not only the classic production of palm oil, the common way to produce palm oil, but also against the sustainable production, the sustainable supply chain, the ones that is issued by certificate by stakeholders. This was why we started to study the process. We started to study the process of certification and how this would impact if you consider the history of the place, because this report started a very interesting approach. The approach was to consider the historical deforestation, because of course, if you look at what is now, and if you find that there is a forest, of course you can say that that's forested area. Of course, the cutting it or burning it to replant palm oil would represent a threat. But if you go in a place, imagine there is already a plantation, and the plantation just started yesterday, but you go today, you find a plantation, and yesterday there was a forest. Of course, then you can look at the plantation and say, okay, that was a plantation. There is no reason to to believe that that's environmental impact on that because it's plantation, we can start certifying it. But if you look at this map, at the historical deforestation, for instance, in a corridor, in the two areas that I show you in the previous pictures, and the historical fire or spot, you see, of course, that just in the last few years, no more than 2 decades, we had a huge forest loss in this area that was mainly addressed by deforestation, of course, and fire, and that led to the current plantation. So the pattern seems to be first cut, second burn, then you have third grow because you start a plantation, and fourth, forget about everything and certify. This is something extremely worrying, in our opinion. Imagine this scenario. No, you have several areas that are already planted by palm oil, but this is not a palm oil that was started, I don't know, in the Middle Age or even I don't know, 300 years ago. It's something that started less than 30 years ago. So what we wanted to do was to look deeply in the effects of this sustainable certification on palm oil production, because you see, the problem is, as I said before, if the market were still localized and was internal, of course the concern would be much less. But in a globalized world where, for instance, Sumatra and Kalimantan already lost almost 50% of their forest cover on 1990, where Indonesia lost almost 20% of the forest cover, you see that it's extremely fast. So the pace of the velocity of the process, deforestation, is extremely fast, and we really risk to lose the very biodiverse forests that are still surviving in Southeast Asia, even in protected areas, just because a crazy economic expansion. You see, that's the crazy economic expansion that I was talking about, because it seems like very unstoppable. Look at the comparison between the oil palm planting in Indonesia and Malaysia and the loss of natural forest in Indonesia and Malaysia. Of course, you can well understand that palm oil is not the only source of forest loss in Southeast Asia. Of course, we have paper and pulp. Of course, we have valuable timber production and export. Of course, we have several factors, but one of them, maybe one of the main, is related to the production of palm oil, that now actually is moving not only from Southeast Asia. So we are exporting a very bad way to expand our production, because now Africa already started some plantations, South America, and there was very recent concern about some plantation that have been started in Brazil, for instance. And the problem is that, you see, this is the same report from Eyes on Forest and WWF that found how some Indonesian mills buy illegal fresh bunches of palm oil. The problem is that it's not like finding a needle in the haystack, because the market is like Chinese boxes, so it's so difficult to disentangle the contribution of each small branch in this very huge network of companies. Then finding the real pattern from a forest that has been cut before and a palm oil that is being grown in a sort of sustainable way is extremely difficult. And this is why, for instance, the model that organizations like RSPO, certifiers like RSPO promote as big weakness. As a big weakness, because you see that the certification and the third party certification works when the mills receive the the main, no, the main good, so the palm oil, when they receive the product. The problem is before. So nobody is checking what is before that. Because of course, when you receive and you start to process, so on the supply basis, you start to process a palm oil that was assumed to be sustainable, and of course we will see in which terms, then you understand that everything that is before that is quite unsure. And if you, I like very much this scheme that was produced by these NGOs, because you see that the problem is on the left side. If you have a forest, a peatland, and then there is fires or deforestation, and part of these plantations that are grown there, no, like uncertified plantations, then and the production goes in both RSPO certified plantations and non-certified plantations. No, then they go together into the refinery, because nobody exactly can track the movement of these fresh products. And then at the end, you have at the same time something that is certified, something that is uncertified, but in both cases there is no certainty about the real sustainability of this production. And the thing is now, let's start. So that's why we started this research. So we started looking at the impacts of sustainable palm oil. And that's why we started publishing this first paper in Science of Total Environment about the sustainability of the certification scheme, because now we're looking at a pattern like you see in the right side of the slide, no? Starting from forest and fire, then you have deforestation, then you start a plantation that is uncertified plantation, and then after a delta T, no, sometimes pass, and then you can receive the certification. But if you just look a little bit in the past, you see that exactly what is certified as sustainable comes from deforestation. And this is what we actually discovered, because if you look at these maps on the left side, you see that the deforested areas are very well overlapping with the palm oil concessions and with the RSPO concession. And if you consider the percentage of tree loss in the three different kind of areas, like concession, palm oil, and certified and total area, you see that RSPO concessions have a higher percentage of tree loss within their boundaries. Of course, the problem was, okay, but with tree loss, you consider everything that is a tree removed. So how you can be sure that what was removed, what was cut, was a forest or a palm, oil palm, or something like a dead tree, something else. So the thing is that we looked into the maps, we look in a high resolution satellite images, and we saw that, you see, for instance, from 1984, two currently certified plantations were actually mostly forested. And then in a few years, they follow a pattern of deforestation. The palm oil plantation started to go inside the concessions and remove forests, even in the surrounding areas. So this facilitated actually the impact. And after a few years, maybe you see in 2015 in a case, in 2014, they received the RSPO certificate. This is why we published a second paper. I will conclude with this. We published a second paper where we actually looked deeply inside, no, with the satellite high resolution image to disjoin, no, the tree loss that could be from different causes and the real forest loss. And we started to see, no, in each RSPO basis, in Borneo, in Sumatra, in Kalimantan, the real pattern from the forest to the deforestation. You see the red areas at the end in 2020 are the area of plantation, and the green are the remnants of forest. Of course, in this case, you see, and we did this for all RSPO supplying basis. And you see that for the basis, for each basis, you have almost over 90% of deforestation. So the forest was completely lost. And if you overlap these areas, the current concession, to the historical habitat of endangered mammoths like the Sumatran elephant, tiger, rhino, or the Borneo orangutan, you see that the overlap is extremely high. It means that, for instance, imagine the case of Borneo in 1999, the orangutan habitat in almost 70% of the cases overlapped with the current palm oil certified as sustainable concessions. And the thing is that satellite images cannot lie. No, if you look at the number of areas that we studied and the overlap with the orangutan habitats in 1989, but even in 1999, you see that in Borneo, for instance, of 173 areas, 131 are located in the orangutan habitats of 1989. So how we can talk about the real sustainability of this production if we don't consider the historical impact? Look at the forest area in 1984 and the forest area in 2020. You see that the forest area that remains today is almost nothing in this RSPO supplied the concession and supply basis. So the thing is, even if palm oil is somehow certified as sustainable, we cannot confirm and we cannot ensure. Actually, we see that the process is almost the same of uncertified as sustainable palm oil. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Roberto, for your presentation. I think it will raise some questions. I will ask all the speakers from this session to come on stage. Roberto, two questions for you. Palm oil is responsible for less than 5% of global deforestation during the last 25 years. What would be the environmental effect if this was to be substituted by overcrop, taking into account the yield per hectare of palm oil?
Yeah, the thing is that the fact that palm oil is responsible for only 5% of global deforestation is not completely true. The thing is, of course, if you look what was the first main cause of deforestation, you will never find palm oil, because nobody goes in a forest, cut the forest just to grow a palm oil plantation. It starts as a fire, it starts as a timber logging, it starts for different other reasons. So, of course, the forest is cleared because of paper and pulp, other main interests, and then the plantation goes. So, of course, looking at the main responsibility of palm oil, you will see that just 5% or even less is due to these causes. But if you really look at where palm oil plantations currently are grown, you will see that 99% of them are located in a forested area less than 20-30 years ago. So the thing is this, and this is just to answer the first part of the question. The environmental effect of other plantations or other crops would be almost zero if we consider that palm oil now supplies not very fundamental goods, not very fundamental products. We find palm oil in food, polluting cosmetics, and biofuel. We actually call this biofuel, even if it's not bio at all, because the environmental impact of this biological product is very high. So why would need to substitute? So I will keep the palm oil market local, because of course it's important for the country that produce it, but globalization of this product is the main problem.
So a question that I also have in mind for you, Roberto. Certification use a cutoff date. After this date, no deforestation can happen, otherwise it cannot be certified. So what solution would you propose to address deforestation issue?
Let me be frank and clear on this. The RSPO cutoff date is completely arbitrary. Nobody assesses it in an environmental way. Why they decided to start after 2004? Why they don't consider what happened in 2003 or 2002? It's just 1 year or 2 years before. So it's something that's completely not based on nothing, not based on science, and how you can certify as sustainable something that just the year before was a forest. So this is the thing. The solution would be simply reforest what has been deforested. Why you need to grow a palm oil? So of course the mistakes, or what happened in the past, as in the question, unfortunately happened in the past, but not because of this. We could just say, okay, we forget all this. We don't care. It happened in the past. No, we need to account for what happened, particularly in the recent past, because we still have the way to restore the mistakes of the past. For instance, instead of growing oil for the global market, because I said that it just fills junk food, biofuel, and cosmetics, nothing extremely fundamental for humanity, then we can reforest these areas, and that would replace the mistakes of the past.
One question about deforestation, and I'm completely neutral in this debate. There was a lot of deforestation in Europe too, because of moving from forest to agriculture area. What's about your gut feeling about this? And do you try to compare the deforestation impact in Europe, same comparison than what you did in Malaysia or Indonesia?
Yeah, you consider that I'm originally from Italy, where olive oil is very well expanded. And of course, I know I am concerned about the impacts of this. But the two things are, first, this happened more than 200 years ago, not only 20 years ago. And second, not because we made mistakes in the past that we allow new mistakes in the present, because the mistakes that we made in the past, I am talking about environmental impacts, and were also based in areas like Europe or US, in temperate zones, where of course the impact was high, but it couldn't be compared, even of different order of magnitude, of the huge amount of diversity that you remove working and using in tropical areas. So of course we should take into account this. But we also need to consider that we cannot just forgive everything just because it happened in the past. No, we need to work differently now. It's the same approach that we use in sustainable development. Not because we use a word in a very wrong way that now we need to allow developing countries to do the same. We need to help, maybe just with the know-how transfer, with different ways, economic, global rules to improve and to really make it sustainable. In the case of palm oil, we actually don't need it.